This is the location of a portal.
Telos is a crystal city beneath Mount Shasta.
How do you find the entrance to Telos?
Some people find a vortex or a portal and they go. And they don't have no desire to come back.
Mount Shasta looks like a postcard, but it's actually a massive, ticking time bomb draped in white. To most people, it's just a pretty peak in Northern California, a place for hikers and spiritual seekers to find themselves. But if you look closer, the peace up there feels more like a trap. Between the geological warnings we're ignoring and the people who walk into the woods and never come back, things aren't right. The mountain isn't a sanctuary, it's a predator. The sleeping god. When you look at Mount Shasta from the I-5, it's hard not to be impressed. It's huge, lonely, and covered in snow that sparkles like a diamond. But geologists see something totally different. To them, Shasta isn't just a mountain. It's a high-threat stratovolcano that has a nasty habit of falling apart. We like to think of mountains as solid, permanent things, but Shasta is actually a mess of loose rock, ice, and pressurized gas held together by nothing but gravity and a little bit of luck. The real secret the mountain is hiding is written in the dirt of the Shasta Valley. If you go north of the peak, you'll see thousands of weird little hills. For a long time, people thought these were just random bumps in the landscape. They aren't. They are the remains of one of the largest volcanic landslides in the history of the planet. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, a huge chunk of the mountain literally collapsed and roared 30 miles across the valley floor. It moved so fast and with so much force that it could have buried a city in minutes. And the scary part? Scientists say it could happen again. Shasta is what experts call a polygenetic volcano. This means it doesn't just erupt and get it over with. It builds itself up over and over again on top of its own wreckage. Right now, there are 4 distinct cones overlapping each other. The youngest one, Shastina, is only about 9,700 years old. In mountain time, that's basically yesterday. This thing is still very much alive. While everyone is busy looking at the spiritual vibes of the summit, the USGS is watching the GPS sensors. They're looking for the ground to swell, which happens when magma starts pushing its way up from the basement. The danger isn't just about red-hot lava either. The bigger threat is a lahar, a fancy word for a volcanic mudslide. Shasta holds a massive amount of ice and snow. If a small eruption happens, or even just a significant internal heat spike, all that ice turns into water instantly. It mixes with ash and rock to create a concrete-like slurry that moves at 60 miles per hour. It would wipe out towns like Weed or Mount Shasta City before the sirens could even finish their first blast. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. We live in the shadow of a giant that has woken up every 600 to 800 years for the last 10 millennia. The last major eruption was roughly 200 to 300 years ago. We are sitting right in the window for another one. We treat it like a playground, but we're actually just ants crawling on a furnace that's starting to smoke. Nature, however, is rarely as quiet as it looks. The vanishing act. If the geological threat is a ticking bomb, the human cost is a cold case file that never ends. There is a specific kind of silence that exists in the Shasta-Trinity National Forest, a heavy, muffled quiet that makes you feel like the trees are leaning in to listen to your heartbeat. For decades, this mountain has been the backdrop for some of the most baffling disappearances in North America. These aren't just cases of hikers losing the trail or slipping on a loose rock. These are stories that defy logic and leave seasoned search and rescue teams shaking their heads in total frustration. Take, for example, the high-profile cases often discussed in the Missing 411 circles. People don't just go missing here, they vanish in seconds, often within earshot of their companions. One minute a child is walking 5 feet behind their parents, and the next, they are gone. No scream, no sound of a struggle, and most importantly, no tracks. In the rugged terrain of Shasta, you'd expect to find a footprint, a torn piece of flannel, or a dropped water bottle. Instead, searchers often find absolutely nothing, or they find something that makes even less sense. There have been reports of search teams finding a missing person's gear neatly folded or stacked miles away from where they were last seen, in areas that should have been impossible for them to reach on foot in such a short amount of time. Even weirder are the silence zones reported by survivors and rescuers alike. People describe a sudden, terrifying drop in ambient noise. The birds stop singing, the wind dies down, and the forest feels like it's been placed under a vacuum seal. It's in these moments of unnatural stillness that people seem to slip through the cracks of our world. One of the most unsettling stories involves a 3-year-old boy who vanished and was later found in a remote area. When asked where he had been, he told a bizarre story about being taken into a cave by a robot, or a man who looked like his grandma. While we can chalk that up to a child's imagination under stress, it fits a recurring pattern of survivors mentioning underground spaces or strange figures that don't belong in the wilderness. It makes you wonder if the mountain isn't just a pile of rock, but a Swiss cheese of hidden tunnels and pockets that we haven't mapped yet. Then there's the weather. In many of these cases, the moment a search and rescue operation begins, a freak storm rolls in. We're talking about bluebird skies turning into blinding snowstorms in July. These localized storms often seem to center exactly where the person went missing, washing away scent trails and making infrared cameras useless. It's almost as if the mountain itself is actively trying to hide what it took. Skeptics say it's just the unpredictable nature of alpine weather. But for the volunteers who have spent weeks combing the brush for a trace of a human being, it feels personal. The statistics are the hardest part to ignore. The density of disappearances around Mount Shasta is statistically higher than in many other national forests with similar foot traffic. We like to tell ourselves that we are the apex predators, that we can GPS and satellite link our way out of any situation. But Shasta has a way of short-circuiting that confidence. It's a place where the map doesn't always match the ground, and where lost is a very polite word for something much more permanent. Some don't just disappear. They leave behind stories that don't fit our reality. The Telos mythos. While the missing hikers leave behind empty trails, the people who come to Shasta looking for enlightenment leave behind something much stranger. A massive, sprawling mythology that suggests the mountain is hollow. This isn't just about a few people seeing lights in the sky. It's a deeply rooted belief that a literal, high-tech city named Telos exists beneath the granite. According to the lore, this city is inhabited by the Lemurians, survivors of a sunken continent who fled underground thousands of years ago to escape a global cataclysm. It sounds like the plot of a B-movie, but for a huge community of people, this is a literal, physical truth. The legend really took off in the 30s when Guy Ballard, founder of the I Am activity, claimed he met a supernatural being named Saint Germain on the slopes of the mountain. Ballard described a world of hidden gold, advanced technology, and masters who could walk through walls. Since then, the mountain has become a magnet for every New Age theory under the sun. People talk about interdimensional portals at the summit and crystal cities pulsing in the depths. They believe the mountain is a massive antenna for cosmic energy, drawing in beings from other dimensions who use the peak as a sort of galactic airport. But if you strip away the talk of crystals and vibrations, you're left with a very unsettling psychological reality. Why has this specific mountain become the focus of such intense, persistent obsession? It's because Mount Shasta feels wrong in a way that's hard to put into words. People who visit often report pioneer feelings, a strange sense of being watched, or an overwhelming urge to leave certain areas immediately. Psychologists might call it infrasound or magnetic anomalies causing hallucinations, But the believers say it's the mountain's defense system, trying to keep us away from the secrets inside. There are countless stories of people stumbling upon hidden entrances only to find themselves suddenly confused or back where they started. Some claim to have seen tall, robed figures appearing and disappearing near the Panther Meadows area, figures that don't look entirely human and move with an eerie, fluid grace. These sightings aren't just from the 30s, they happen today. Local businesses in the town of Mount Shasta are filled with books and maps detailing these underground chambers, treating the existence of a hollow mountain not as a fantasy, but as a local fact that the government is desperately trying to hide. The worst part of the Telos myth isn't the idea of a hidden city. It's the implication that we aren't the primary residents of this planet. The theory suggests that while we're busy building strip malls and highways on the surface, a much more advanced civilization is watching us from just a few miles beneath our boots. It frames humanity as the surface dwellers, who are loud, messy, and oblivious to the real power structures of the Earth. Whether you believe in Lemurians or not, the myth serves as a constant reminder of how little we actually know about what lies beneath the crust. Even the physical geology of the mountain plays into this. Shasta is full of lava tubes, long, winding tunnels created by ancient molten flows. Some of these tubes are miles long and large enough to drive a truck through. When you realize the mountain is literally riddled with natural tunnels, the jump to underground city doesn't seem quite so impossible to the human imagination. It's the perfect hiding spot for anything that wants to stay out of sight, tucked away in the cold, dark silence of the rock. If there is a city in the stone, its gates are guarded by more than just myth. The lenticular veil. If you spend a few days in the shadow of Mount Shasta, you'll eventually see them. The clouds. They aren't the fluffy, drifting white puffs you see everywhere else. These are lenticular clouds, smooth, multi-layered disks that look exactly like giant saucers hovering over the peak. Scientists will tell you they are just a byproduct of mountain waves, where moist air is forced upward, cools, and condenses into a stationary lens shape. It's a clean, logical, and boring explanation. But for the people on the ground, these clouds are more like a stage curtain. The local lore is packed with stories of these clouds behaving in ways that physics can't quite explain. People report seeing metallic flashes through the mist or watching clouds fly against the wind at impossible speeds. There's a persistent theory that the mountain's unique magnetic signature makes it a natural cloaking device. If you were a craft from somewhere else or somewhere internal, what better way to hide than to generate a localized weather pattern that looks perfectly natural to a meteorologist but hides a fleet of ships? This isn't just tinfoil hat talk. Pilots have reported weird radar pings and instrument failures while flying near the peak. Some describe dead zones where their GPS goes haywire, only for everything to return to normal once they move away from the mountain's immediate airspace. There's also the matter of the lichens and gray sightings. In the dense, unmapped pockets of the forest, campers have reported seeing beings that don't fit the Lemurian enlightened master mold. These are descriptions of creatures that feel more like biological experiments or high-tech drones than spiritual guides. The mountain seems to act like a giant magnet for high-energy phenomena. Some researchers believe the high concentration of quartz and other minerals in the volcanic rock creates a piezoelectric effect, literally turning the mountain into a massive natural battery. This could explain the strange lights, the glowing orbs often seen darting into the tree line, and the general feeling of static in the air that many visitors report. It's as if the mountain is constantly humming on a frequency that our bodies can feel, even if our ears can't hear it. When the sun sets and the lenticular clouds catch the last orange rays of light, the mountain looks otherworldly. It's easy to see why so many cultures and subcultures view it as a portal. Whether it's masking secret military tech, alien visitors, or just a very strange quirk of atmospheric pressure, the veil over Shasta is thick. We look up and see a beautiful weather phenomenon, but the more time you spend there, the more you start to wonder if something is looking back through the mist. The sky hides secrets, but the ground remembers them. The indigenous warning. Long before the New Age seekers arrived with their crystals and the geologists came with their sensors, the Wintu, Karak, and Okwanuchu. People knew the truth about Mount Shasta. For them, it wasn't a playground or a mystery to be solved. It was a powerful, sentient presence that demanded distance and respect. They didn't see the mountain as a hollow city for humans to colonize. They saw it as the home of the Great Spirit, a place where the boundary between our world and the spirit realm was dangerously thin. The Wintu, in particular, have long warned about the little people of the mountain. These aren't the friendly elves of European folklore. They are described as powerful, sometimes territorial beings that can lead a person astray or cause them to lose their mind if they show disrespect to the land. While modern tourists trample over sacred springs like Panther Meadows, indigenous elders warn that such desecration has consequences. They believe the mountain has a memory, and it doesn't take kindly to being treated like a tourist trap. There is a fundamental wrongness in how we interact with Shasta today. To the tribes, the idea of summiting the mountain is almost offensive. You don't stand on the head of a god. The warning is simple. Some places aren't meant for us. When we hear stories of weird disappearances or strange lights, the indigenous response isn't surprise. It's a somber acknowledgement. They've known for centuries that the mountain takes people who don't belong or who wander into the wrong places at the wrong times. Today, the battle to protect these sacred sites is ongoing. The tribes argue that the constant noise, construction, and foot traffic are disturbing the mountain's balance. They see the spirits of the mountain not as metaphors, but as active forces that react to our presence. If the mountain feels like it's breathing or watching, it's because, in their worldview, it is. We've ignored these warnings in favor of our own curiosity, but the mountain's patience is not infinite. We ignored the warnings, and now the mountain is answering. The mirror in the ice. At the end of the day, Mount Shasta isn't just a mountain. It's a giant, icy mirror reflecting whatever we're most afraid of or whatever we're most desperate to believe. If you're a scientist, you see a geological nightmare of unstable rock and pressurized magma waiting to reset the clock on Northern California. If you're a seeker, you see a golden city of light hidden behind a veil of clouds, promising a level of evolution we haven't reached yet. And if you're a local sheriff or a search and rescue volunteer, you see a hungry wilderness that swallows people whole and offers no apologies. The thing about Shasta isn't actually the threat of an eruption or the possibility of aliens in the basement. It's the realization that the mountain is completely indifferent to us. We spend our lives trying to map it, name it, and conquer its summit, but we are just a blink of an eye in its history. Whether there are Lemurians in the tunnels or just cold, empty lava tubes, the mountain remains a fortress of secrets that we aren't invited to solve. We've turned it into a circus of crystals and conspiracy theories to distract ourselves from the much scarier truth. We are standing on a massive, volatile force of nature that we cannot control. As the sun dips below the horizon and the lenticular clouds start to glow with that eerie, bruised purple light, the mountain changes. The hikers go home. The gift shops in town lock their doors, and the peak is left to the wind and whatever else moves in the dark. You can feel the weight of it, the sheer, crushing mass of millions of tons of rock and ice. It's a reminder that for all our technology and all our enlightenment, there are still places on this earth where the rules of the civilized world don't apply. Mount Shasta is hiding something, but maybe it's not a city or a monster. Maybe it's just the fact that we are much smaller and much more vulnerable than we like to admit. We look at the peak and see beauty, but the mountain looks back and sees nothing but dust. It's a silent giant, waiting for its next eruption, its next visitor, or its next victim. And the most chilling part of all? It has all the time in the world to wait. Thanks for sticking till the end of the video. Subscribe to our channel for more of the same awesome content.